Hello, everyone. This is the Mind of Lilith, and thank you for joining me today for another celebrity chart delineation. And this presentation will be part one of a two-part discussion about singer, songwriter, serial entrepreneur, and reality star Kandi Burruss. Part one will focus on Kandi Burruss's individual natal chart, and part two will be a synastry reading for her and her now estranged husband, Todd Tucker. I'm not going to do a full chart analysis for Kandi. I'm not trying to be here all day. I'm just going to focus on the effect that the planet Uranus has on her lifestyle and relationships. The reason why I've chosen Kandi for this presentation is because she and her husband Todd have recently announced their separation after 11 years of marriage. In part two, I'll explain why their marriage lasted as long as it did. But to be honest, I'm not surprised they're getting a divorce because they never seemed to have chemistry to me. Their energies did not match up, which is why their relationship looked like a job from the very beginning. And for Todd, it probably was. And I'll explain why I believe this in part two, which has been posted to the Stargazer membership tier if you want to join that today. So let's get started with a quick overview of Kandi's natal chart. I don't have her time of birth, so this reading will focus on her planetary placements, their aspects, and the current transits. According to Wikipedia, Kandi Burruss was born on May 17th, 1976 in College Park, Georgia. She has a sun at 27 degrees and 34 minutes of Taurus. The moon is at 28 degrees and 19 minutes of Capricorn in debilitation. Mercury is at 0 degrees of Gemini, and this is in domicile. Venus is in domicile at 19 degrees and 15 minutes of Taurus. Mars is in Leo at 1 degree and 5 minutes. Jupiter is in Taurus at 12 degrees, 32 minutes, conjunct Venus and the Sun. It's in wide conjunction. They're in the same house. Saturn's in its fall in Cancer at 28 degrees and 19 minutes. Uranus is in Scorpio, opposing Kandi's Jupiter in Taurus, but also her Venus as well at 4 degrees and 10 minutes. Neptune is in Sagittarius at 13 degrees, and Pluto is in Libra at 9 degrees, 11 minutes, square Kandi's moon, but it's not a square necessarily by degree, but a square by sign. So her north node is in Scorpio, conjunct Uranus, and her south node is in Taurus at 11 degrees, conjunct her Jupiter, Venus, and Sun, because the conjunctions also cause a chain reaction. So the energy of Jupiter is being transferred to Venus and thus to the Sun as well, and especially since the Sun's expositor is in the same house. So this facilitates an easy transference of energy from different planets. All right, so let's get started with these delineations. At first glance, looking at Kandi's chart, I can see that she's torn between two pathways: tradition versus reform, stability versus transformation, the past versus the future, masculine versus feminine. As a Generation Xer, Kandi was born at a time when Western women were truly enjoying their full independence. Back in the day, this generation was referred to as Millennium women, not to be confused with millennial women who were born from 1983 to 1996. The song I'm Every Woman by Chaka Khan describes the phenomena of women fulfilling both traditional and non-traditional roles. These are the women who were expected to effectuate their domestic duties while financially contributing to the household as modern educated women. Of course, this experiment has since failed, with subsequent generations of women quitting marriage and or children because the burden of being a full-time mother, housekeeper, and financial provider is, it can be done, but it's a miserable existence. So Kandi Burruss comes from that generation, that first generation of women who believed they could have it all: the family, the career, the money, and the man. Unfortunately for her and many other women, this is seldom the case because the amount of time, money, and energy that each of these areas requires makes it almost impossible to do all of them well. There has to be some compromise, which pushed these women in a conundrum. When Millennium women got married, these are Gen X women, their husbands also wanted them to compromise in areas that threatened their comfort, freedom, and sovereignty. If a wife gives up her career to raise her children, she becomes financially dependent on her husband, who can leave her at any time, since the cultural and social stigma of for a man abandoning his family has all but disappeared. Conversely, if the wife devotes herself to a career, she's often still tasked with the responsibility of managing her children and the household household, which is a full-time job. So women who want to have it all are often caught between a rock and a hard place in their lives, with their husbands feeling emasculated and neglected, and then they feel guilty about missing important milestones in their children's lives. Sometimes these women use money and material things to mask their deep discontent with life, and sometimes alcohol and drugs too. I won't get into that, but this obvious dissatisfaction and inner turmoil is one of the reasons why younger generations of women are attracted to the hypergamy lifestyle, hypergamy, it doesn't matter, where they can just focus on themselves, their children, or the home while the rich husband pays all the bills. In essence, Millennium women like Kandi Burruss were socially engineered to want bigger and better lives that were more expensive and time-consuming to maintain for the benefit of the government. And we can see decades later that a lot of these women are burnt out, wanting peace, freedom, and simplicity without the responsibility of motherhood or matrimony. In essence, many of these women went from wanting the husband, the house, the kids, the career, and the money to just wanting the money and the house that they frequently live to travel abroad. And this brings me to the planet of Uranus and its role in Kandi's personality development and expression. So, the reason I wanted to focus on Uranus for today's discussion is because of the current Uranus in Taurus transit retrograde, which is forming a conjunction with Kandi's sun, but also think that the sign and aspect of this planet, Uranus, can explain the nature of Kandi's lifestyle and relationships. Uranus is the planet of reform, constant unexpected changes, eccentricity, heterodoxy, curiosity, risk-taking, and freedom. Uranian people are futuristic, they're unique, restless, and somewhat scattered. Uranus's sign, house, and aspects determine how this erratic energy is expressed. In Kandi's case, all of her personal planets, including the sun, her sun's dispositor, and the nodes are affected by Uranus. Not all, but most. So even though she has a stellium of fixed planets in her chart, Kandi exemplifies how this energy affects the earth sign. So earlier I mentioned that Kandi is a serial entrepreneur, which means she has lots of different sources of income. And this can be attributed to her Jupiter-Venus conjunction and Uranus opposite Venus, which is her sun's dispositor. For Uranian people, diversity is freedom. Kandi went from being a singer in a group called Escape to being a successful songwriter, reality TV show star. She opened multiple restaurants. She has a podcast, and I think she has a production company where she's producing a Broadway show now. I'm not sure. She's also married with 3 children. All this sounds like a lot, but as a sun in Taurus, Kandi takes pride in being financially stable. She loves building things, but because of the South Node conjunction and Uranus in opposition, and the sign of Taurus and Scorpio respectively, she quickly loses interest in what she's built because these are not necessarily passion projects for her. She's passionate about making money, but how she makes it is of little importance to her. So it's hard for her to reach the heights of success in these areas because her focus is scattered. Although I will say that her success as a songwriter can be attributed to her Mercury in Gemini opposite Neptune Sagittarius. Neptune's dispositor of Jupiter in Taurus is forming a chain to the stellium in Taurus that forms a chain with all these other planets, including Venus and the Sun. Jupiter conjunct Venus is a very abundant aspect. So the people who have this placement tend to attract money really, really easily, especially if they're doing what the sign of Jupiter wants them to do. Okay. So Neptune's dispositor of Jupiter is in Taurus, and it forms a chain to the stellium that includes a very strong Venus and Sun. In 1999, Kandi co-wrote the song No Scrubs with Tiny Harris, and this is a woman's empowerment song or anthem sung by the girl group TLC. She won a Grammy for this song in the year 2000, and I'm sure the publishing checks are still coming in. I mentioned her Mercury in Gemini opposing Neptune and Sagittarius. Sagittarius rules publishing, Gemini rules writing, and Jupiter rules abundance, and Venus rules women. Mercury is one house away from Kandi's sun in Taurus, which is the house of personal assets, finances, and what we value. Now, Uranus is currently in retrograde through Taurus at 29 degrees. As you guys can see, Kandi's sun is at the final decan of Taurus at 27 degrees, which is why she's being so affected by this transit. Although her separation from Todd seems sudden to us, Uranus has been in Taurus since 2018. And this transit started 4 years into her marriage to Todd. So over the past 7 years, Uranus passed over Kandi's South Node, which rules the past, her Jupiter, which rules abundance and opportunity, Venus, which rules women, pleasure, and money, and finally her Sun, which represents her ego. Throughout this 7-year period, Kandi learned valuable lessons about love, money, and true fulfillment, and perhaps she began to realize that in spite of all the things and money and people she acquired, she still lacked peace, contentment, and fulfillment because she wasn't living authentically in some capacity. With the Uranus and Scorpio placement, Kandi was searching for deeper intimacy and power that comes from within. And sometimes these deeper connections came from untraditional sexual interactions with women, right? This is Uranus and Scorpio. So Kandi was searching for deeper intimacy, not from material things. The South Node in Taurus asks us to detach from materialism and learn how to share power and resources with others. But with Mars and Leo forming a square to our North Node in Scorpio, Kandi had legitimate fears and reservations about giving her power and resources to a man. In essence, Kandi wanted to be both traditional and futuristic, playing the role of the mother, the wife, but also the financial provider, who is a sexually liberated, progressive, bisexual woman. Jupiter conjunct Venus in any sign can indicate hedonism, greed, sensuality, materialism. But in Taurus, these significations are amplified to the point of having an almost bacchanalian lifestyle. Jupiter conjunct Venus is the having your cake and eating it too aspect, and this can sometimes elicit addictions to food, sex, money, or other pleasures. Jupiter conjunct Venus types find it difficult to limit themselves in any capacity, especially when it comes to experience sexual or sensual pleasures, food, touch, taste, smell, whatever. These people have a lot of everything that makes them feel good, even to the detriment of their friendships and romantic relationships. With Mars square Venus and Saturn opposing the moon, Kandi wanted to play both the role of male and female in her relationship, which may be easier to do in a lesbian relationship than a heterosexual one. So I wouldn't be surprised if Kandi starts to openly date women after a divorce. With Uranus opposite Venus and Jupiter, Kandi needed the freedom to explore her sensual and sexual desires during their relationship. And that was the only way this marriage was going to work. But those experiences may have enlightened her to the fact that she had to let go of this relationship because it was limiting her sexual or personality expression in some significant way. Uranus in retrograde at 29 degrees causes us to review the last 7 years of our lives relative to the house and sign that Uranus is transiting in and its planetary aspects. And for Kandi, this transit has caused her to take stock of this relationship, realizing that she wanted to be free of the responsibilities and obligations of matrimony despite all the freedom she enjoyed within the marriage. There's a strong possibility that Kandi learned something about herself that made it impossible to live a lie in her marriage anymore. She may have also realized that she was pursuing all of these side projects to hide how unhappy she was in her relationship. As a Leo, this Uranus and Taurus transit has also affected Todd's life significantly because it's forming a square to his sun, and squares to the sun are about challenges, conflicts, and difficult changes that affect our entire identity. So with Uranus opposite Venus and square Mars, Kandi is far from traditional. Even with her Capricorn moon and Saturn in Cancer, her progressed sun in Taurus entered the sign of Cancer around the year 2010. And at this time period, she became more interested in home and family and children and marriage and traditional roles. 1 year later, she met her future husband, Todd Tucker, and they got married in 2014. Earth signs, especially those with strong Venuses, are the ultimate manifestors, and I think the fire signs are number 2. Earth signs rule the physical and material world, so they have a knack for attracting the right people, possessions, and money like a magnet. This is the element that has to be careful for what they wish for because sometimes they get more than what they bargain for, and their stubbornness will make it hard for them to release the toxic people and situations because their ego identity is validated by what they own. Some of these people think that they own people, especially people who are financially and emotionally dependent on them. So with Venus, Jupiter, and the Sun in Taurus, Kandi has been heavily focused on the acquisition of physical things while neglecting her emotional needs, and money has given her the freedom and thus the power to live life on her own terms. But this stubborn attitude can elicit jealousy or resentment from her partners, especially men who may feel like she's a better man than they are. Right? I won't get too much into the synastry of Todd and Kandi in this reading. You can join the membership tier for that presentation, which has been posted today. But there's a possibility at some point Todd felt like their marriage revolved around Kandi's resources, her money, her power, and he was just an accessory or another item on Kandi's long checklist of things she wanted to own. The husband, the kids, the businesses, the money, success, the house, this, right? So with the stellium and Taurus opposing Uranus and Scorpio, Kandi shared her power with Todd by having threesomes with him, but those experiences were more for her pleasure, I think, than his, or they equally enjoyed this experience. So the solution of the marriage is not a surprise to me because neither Kandi nor Todd are traditional. Todd likes women who are more successful than him, and Kandi likes to be the man in a relationship, right? For the most part. So this makes sense. Millennium and millennial women, they've learned a very difficult lesson about trying to be everything for everybody. And when you try to be everything for everybody for your own ego, right? I'm every woman. I can do it all. I can be the mother, the housewife, the sex kitten, the professional, this and that. You get burnt out. And this agenda was pushed by the powers that be to get women to become more materialistic and thus participate in consumerism, which is good for sales tax revenue and good for business, right? So a lot of women in Kandi's generation, Gen X, are realizing that they're happier with the simpler life. And this is something that I discussed for the air signs in the Grand Water Trine presentation that is on this channel. It's been posted. Take a look at that when you have the time. But men and women are looking for more simplicity, more authenticity, right? They want to relate to others in a real significant way. They don't just want to be, respected or revered for what they have, right? And so the Uranus in Taurus transit is making Kandi aware of her relationship to money and how money is not all that she needs to be fulfilled. Okay. Uranus again is about change. So her attitudes about money has changed during this time period. So she may be seeking deeper emotional, intimate sexual connections at this time after realizing that, I have the money, the house, the kids, the car, all this stuff, and I'm still profoundly unhappy in this relationship. I want something deeper, something greater, something more intense, spiritual, psychological, right? And so, what is interesting is that when Uranus enters Gemini next year, Todd and Kandi will be in the clear. They won't have this dissonant energy affecting their relationship anymore. But I wonder if one or both of them had like an aha moment or an epiphany that will make it impossible for them to go back, right? And I think that's what it is. I think that something happened over the past year or so that made it impossible for Kandi and Todd to go back to the way things were, even if things became easier from, this moment forward with the Uranus and Gemini transit. There's something that they found out that would require both of them to significantly adjust their expectations for this relationship. Uranus is the planet of permanent change. You cannot go back to the way things were after this transit. So even if they wanted to, I don't think that this could work out if they found out something about themselves or this relationship that would explain why they were so unhappy for so long. So it's like they can't put the toothpaste back in a tube. Pandora's box is now opened. And so, this Uranus in Taurus retrograde is pretty much helping both of them to close out this chapter and to tie up any remaining emotional loose ends or any confusion about what's happening in this relationship. They may have been separated for a while before they made this decision. They've had issues in their relationship from the very beginning, but those issues were mainly external. These issues are now internal. Now it's not Mama Joyce anymore or the public. It's each other. They're not really compatible. And I explain why in their synastry reading, which is in membership tier. So that's it for part 1 of this presentation. Part 2 has been posted for Stargazing members, and you can join the channel here for Todd and Kandi's synastry and why I think their marriage was never really about love, and also why their lives never seemed to gel together despite all of their intentions. And they really did try, because it's a miracle that this relationship lasted as long as it did, considering the aspects in their synastry chart, okay? All right, guys, I'm going to leave it there. I look forward to reading your feedback. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll speak to you soon.